I'm Sam here with my friends Al, Erica, and Tori. All right, let's get right to the tragedy that all of you are talking about. In fact, a lot of stars are reacting to what happened on the set of Alec Baldwin's movie Rust in New Mexico. Local officials say director of photography Halyna Hutchins was killed after Alec discharged a prop firearm on set. Elijah Wood tweeted, quote, "Absolutely horrifying and devastating news. My heart goes out to her family." Actor Joe Manganiello, who worked with Halyna on the set of his movie Arch Enemy, said he was shocked and called her an incredible talent and great person. Holly Robinson Peete called the accident horrific and disturbing and said, quote, "I've been on sets with guns. We are shown the empty barrel and make sure there's nothing in the chamber. How did this happen?" Alec Baldwin's brother, Stephen, posted on Instagram asking people to pray for all involved in the wake of this tragic accident. Tori, what do you make of the reactions?
I just think a lot of them are seasoned actors and they're used to a set in which there's a firearms expert. And like Holly Robinson Peete said and Cameron Matheson echoed, they are shown the chamber. I mean, after the Brandon Lee accident that happened a long time ago. 1993, there were changes made, and that was on purpose. And the Brandon Lee family sued the production company and the director. And you would think, as she said so eloquently, Erica, that in 2021 technology, perhaps we go to air guns, perhaps we go to special effects. Are we still using real ammunition? Might be a little outdated at this point, because even one accident is too much. So that's how I feel.
Yeah, I do think that people are kind of suckers for the nostalgia. I remember when Tarantino came out with Grindhouse maybe 10, 12 years.
And some actors prefer it because it helps them get into the character.
The actual physical, people like the way film looks rather than digital. Yeah, it's Tom Cruise still does his own stunts. So like, if we could just easily put CGI in for everything, we would. I think it would be much safer. But I don't know how that will play with the actors and with the audiences that they're trying to sell.
Yeah, but to say that to the whole Baldwin and Hutchins family and Sousa family, I know, it's just hard.
Erica, what are you thinking?
Yeah, you know, who would have thought, especially after, it's not like this is the first time that this has ever happened. Yeah. So who would have thought that something like this was possible for it to happen in this day and age? Like, there have been so many advancements in technology. It seems as though there has to be a way or a method to ensure that this is not even in the realm of possibility. But here we are, and I just really want people to just take a beat, as I said earlier, and think about the fact that this is an extreme tragedy that is going to cause PTSD, and there's going to be a lot of effects that happen to everyone surrounding this production. So before you're really quick to talk about something political or post your meme or have a funny joke at someone's expense, empathy. Maybe that's the way you should go.
I agree. Thank you for saying that, Erica. All right, so Dave Chappelle still in the news regarding his Netflix special, his comedy special. So he's saying he's going to stop doing transgender jokes following the controversy over The Closer. Dave's rep told TMZ he won't do jokes about the trans community until we can all laugh together, and said he is open to having discussions with them. The women who organized the walkout of Netflix employees said she invited Dave to talk about the special, but said Dave chose not to show up. Well, Dave's people said no one from Netflix actually reached out to him. Meantime, Jon Stewart defended his friend, calling Dave one of his favorite people on the planet, and said his intentions are never hurtful. All right, Al, so you've seen the special. You are a comic yourself. What do you make of him being open to having discussions and never even doing jokes about transgender individuals ever again?
Well, I mean, it's twofold. One, I'm not surprised. Comics love to talk. You see us on podcasts. We have jobs like this. Joe Rogan, who's a comic, has arguably the largest platform. Jon Stewart, former stand-up comic. We're used to kind of talking through and really almost presenting an argument to the audience and, you know, working backwards from that. So I do understand the sit down. I just worry that this might be one of the situations where I wonder if everybody sitting at the table has good intentions. And I'm not talking about the trans activists. I'm not talking about Dave Chappelle. I'm saying that when you have conversations like this that are nuanced, that just unfortunately leads to people being able to pick at your words, pick at your motives. And I just hope that we are able to have like a conversation that's productive. Because I don't think anybody thinks that Dave Chappelle hates transgender people and wants to see harm done to them. And at the same time, I don't think anybody thinks that transgender people don't like laughter. So clearly these are two parties that can get along. So let's figure out a way to do that and maybe push away any kind of things that are clearly just trying to stir the pot just to stir the pot.
I think something that you said about everyone's intentions, and there's this saying that back in the day, a friend of mine would say, fame or shame, it's all the same game. And in that, it basically means that there's capitalism at play in all of this, whether you're famous for great reasons or you're famous or infamous for not so great reasons. And what I'm hearing, and what my takeaway from the walkout from Netflix was that the quote was, no one is calling for the cancellation of Dave Chappelle. No one's calling for the cancellation of his special. We're calling for for reform and to make sure that people who are putting their lives on the line by telling their stories are advocated for and protected. Dave Chappelle on the other side is saying, I am not against, I'm not transphobic. Now he's saying openly, I'm open to having a conversation. When those two things are the only two things at play, then the table has been placed for a conversation to be had. When there are other intentions behind keeping those two parties separate, and that generally has to do with a lot of money, views, controversy, things that have nothing to do with progressing this conversation forward. And I think that's the stalemate that we're living in right now.
I just have to say, I agree. I totally agree. I think they're open to have a conversation. I'm upset they didn't have one already.
They might, though.
And they might. It just seems like a misunderstanding, maybe, or miscommunication. But I watched the special, too, and he ended by saying no more jokes about transgender until we can all laugh together. He even brought up suicide and discussions that we've had, and there was a whole story to it. The one part that bothered me was when he said, I'm Team TERF, T-E-R-F. And that is someone who's a feminist who doesn't believe that trans women deserve feminist advocacy. That bothered me, I gotta be honest. That's a strong statement. So I do think he has some stuff to answer to. I think he should sit down. Jon Stewart would sit down, I'm sure he would. Let's make this happen and let's let the views go to where it should go.
But then, well, let's remember, we're gonna ride with this forever. So any comedy special that anybody watches where something bothers them, then are we ready to have a conversation about that as well?
But listen to me, Al, you are one of the most empathetic, progressive, kind people I know. You're also a damn good comedian. But if you saw a lot of pushback, even if your intention, you would immediately you would see all these people hurt, saying, Al, we are hurt, and you are jeopardizing our lives. Of course, that's not Dave Chappelle's intention. But somehow the narrative got lost with social media, with everyone's own inserted opinion.
I thought that was strange. I thought that was strange that he doubled down like that.
You would want to somehow sit down and make it right, just like Dave Chappelle does. I commend Dave Chappelle for wanting to make it right. I know you would want to do the same. It doesn't mean that we have to cancel all comedy.
Right, yeah, and I don't want it to be this whole, well, it's a slippery slope, but I do want to say that part of comedy and part of art is pushing you to a place where you might not want to go, just so we can now have this conversation, because we would not be talking about the number of black trans women that are killed today on a Friday if it wasn't for this comedy special. So we have to understand that unless we are willing to be able to go in uncomfortable places, we will continue to have this very placid, very chill situation where black trans women are still dying, but we don't talk about it because it's uncomfortable. So I'd rather be uncomfortable and talk about it.
Me too. Great ending. I thought that was a great conversation. Okay, so Adele revealed her most prized possession to Vogue on YouTube, and you will never guess what it is. Take a look.
Celine Dion's gum.
That's right.
What's going on here?
James Corden, who's a friend of mine but also does carpool karaoke, which I did, he did it with her and knew how much a fan of her I was, and so he made her spit her gum into a piece of paper and he framed it for me.
I love it. Okay, here's another look at the framed piece of Celine Dion's chewing gum.
We needed another look.
Okay, Erica's making a weird face.
I know you have something weird. I know Erica has something weird.
Erica, yes. Do you have any weird things, Erica?
I don't, but one of my first celebrity interview encounters was Lenny Kravitz, and when he came to the radio station, and I got him a bottle of water, and he had a couple of sips.
Did you drink out of it?
No, I didn't drink out of it. I took it back home with me because my roommate, Rachel, shout out to Rachel, was a huge Lenny Kravitz.
So what did you guys do with it?
I gave it to her.
What did she do with it?
I don't know.
I'm gonna leave that there.
I don't know what she did with it, but I did. I brought it home, and I gave it to Rachel, and I was
nice
like,
of you.
Lenny Kravitz drank out of this bottle. I saw it with my own
I
eyes.
love that you did that. Would you do anything?
Of
like,
course,
me too.
I think this is so cool of Adele.
Me
How
too.
relatable. I love that she
That's
loves.
relatable.
Yeah, she
That's
loves.
also what a serial killer would. Because if we walked into a serial killer's house and they had that, you'd be like, well, that makes sense. But because it's Adele,
You know
then
what I
it's
love,
fine.
Al? That she's a real fan. She's a real fan of Beyonce. She's a real fan of
That's what
Celine
serial
Dion.
killers are.
That's
Real
true.
fans.
Okay, you're ruining my
There's
point.
a big difference.
I love
there,
Adele,
Al.
by the way.
Big difference. Coming up on DBL, one of Gwyneth Paltrow's sexperts is here live. And don't worry, we're asking all the questions you may be too afraid to ask. Jaya coming up next.
Closed captioning provided by
Hi. So Lulu wrote in, and I appreciate Lulu A saying, I agree with everything Dave said. I'm sorry, even if the turf part, because what he said about turf was not the same as what Tori said. Also, even if he's team turf with the bad meaning of it, so what? It's his opinion. I'm sorry, we need to get over the fact that others don't agree with us. And I agree that trans people have a right to live, however, but I'm allowed to not agree with them. And I completely agree with that. But my question to you back, Lulu, I'm hoping we can have an interactive conversation here, is when your team turf and people are dying at exponential rates because of it, because of anger and violence against trans partners, against anger and hatred towards trans, do you have a bigger responsibility to not push that envelope and say, and he did say, quote, I'm team turf. Now, I'm a comic too. I'm not good. I'm not like really good. I'm not Al. I'm an opener. Do you know what I mean? But I did the shtick, and I get provoking, and I like pushing, and I like comics like Pryor, and I like comics like George Carlin, and I like pushing the envelope.
But would you have liked them in real time?
Good
because
point.
if Richard
Good
Pryor or
point.
George Carlin, I am so glad they're both dead.
Because they didn't have to deal with it.
Because I would have to look at a 19-year-old blogger talking to George Carlin
Being
about
like,
his
you hurt my
language.
feelings.
But that's
No,
when you have to have
I'm glad they're
discernment
dead.
to have like a couple bloggers.
They would come for him.
Okay, but compared to an entire community that's upset, and again,
No, I'm not comparing these two
No,
things.
I know.
I'm saying, but like people that use provocative language are chum in the water
Right.
for people that have websites to go after people who use provocative language. That's
yeah.
how they pay their bills.
Right, and again,
they don't care.
I'm sure Dave Chappelle, he had a very nuanced take at the end. I'm sure he meant no ill intent, but if they can have a conversation, do you know how many people could learn from this? So I
Yeah.
hope it happens.
And I
really
think he
do.
wants to.
I think
He
it'd be
said
cool
it.
Red Table Talk.
That's what I was just going to say.